Welcome everyone to today's London CTOs roundtable event, which is on the influential CTO. So as I said briefly a bit there before, today's event is being sponsored by Hazelcast, and we've got Johnson on the call today, who's going to talk for a little bit. I think, are you free to talk at the moment, Johnson?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I'm hoping this is going to take more than 5 minutes. It's more of a informative thing as opposed to some big rah, let's celebrate Hazelcast. I mean, you can if you want to, but so I'm just gonna add some. I've got a couple of slides, so I'm just going to share my screen so you can just let me know if you can see it. Could you, Barry, did you start the meeting? Could you just enable screen sharing for me, please?
That should be enabled, Johnson.
Okay, let's give it a go. No.
No, not working. I've made you a co-host as well, just in case that helps there.
Let me see if that should help. There we go. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, so hello and welcome everyone to today's session. So I'm Johnson Noel. So I work in the technical solutions team within Hazelcast, and Chiara is also in my team, but she's unavailable. She sends her apologies. So I'm just going to give you a quick whistle-stop tour of who we are and what we're really about. So I work for Hazelcast, and Hazelcast is it's a unified real-time data platform. And what that means is that businesses can use Hazelcast to build real-time applications that can act instantaneously on information as it's created. So this is about capitalizing on the value of that data as it's created during business moments and events. So the idea of real time, it's a business term that defines an SLA for responding to business events. So if you act after the event, it means that opportunities are lost, or you can't prevent risks or threats, for example. And so since our inception around, I think it was 2008, we've enjoyed quite a long and proven, track record in terms of high performance, low latency, stability in the environment. So, we've worked with approximately, 100 of the world's largest companies, of which I'd say about 25%, slightly more maybe, are the world's leading banks. And, you'll see many of these use cases and testaments from, many of these customers on our website. But in one in particular that I think is worth mentioning is BNP Paribas. So they wanted to increase their share of wallet in their clients, and they wanted to increase their loan conversions whilst assisting a very understaffed team. So they came and they spoke to us. They looked at a number of different solutions and they chose us. But the solution needed to be able to act instantly. So they wanted to merge streaming data, and when we talk about streaming data, we're talking about data from your phone or from any device. Anything that's collecting information and transferring it is effectively streaming data. But what they wanted to do was merge that with historical reference information, so information that described that data that was in motion. And it had to be self-serving, and it had to be able to easily integrate with their existing systems. And so if you can imagine, what used to happen was you would walk to an ATM machine, you'd put your card in there, you'd ask for some money, and then you'd be out of credit. At some point in the future, the bank or a organization might get in contact with you and say, well, we've done some research on you, would you like to have a loan? But that opportunity's gone. So what they wanted was a real-time solution. So now what basically happens is you go to an ATM machine for BNP Paribas, you do a credit check when you put your card in, and if you're out of credit, for example, in the space of about 30 to 40 milliseconds, so that's roughly about 10 times the speed of a blink of an eye, they can do fraudulent checks, they can check who you are, they can look at your credit history and all of this information. And then before you've taken your card out, they can offer you a real-time loan. And so, you know, there's the real benefit before that engagement is over. You can take your credit card out and you've got money because they've given you that loan in real time. And so that enabled them to achieve a 400% increase in loan conversions with zero downtime. So it's always on and it's always available. I'm not going to talk about this slide because there's just too much on it and it's complicated and it's time consuming, but it's our architecture. So, I mean, this is the unified stream processing real-time data platform that we're talking about here. These are all of the different sources. You can pull in stuff from Kafka, from flat files, from, you know, relational database structures, whatever. We support SQL, different applications and so forth. And so it's a unified architecture, and it's, you know, other technologies handle this with separate components. And so we simplify that architecture whilst running at very high performance and scale, enabling people to augment their existing systems. We're not talking about ripping and replacing. We're talking about integrating with what you have already. So this gives you the opportunity to build intelligent applications that meet SLAs and, you know, benefit from real-time action, or, you know, wanting to modernize existing systems without the risk of changing them. So we provide those connectors out of the box to integrate. These are just some quotes, some testaments from Gartner recognizing our ability as an enterprise stream processing platform. So they're really talking about, you know, the notion of, you know, real-time unified platforms. The usage and the scenarios are normally quite different. And so at Hazelcast, they have evidence to talk around, you know, this enterprise stream processing platform and the ability to give you high performance and low latency. And this is another quote from GigaOM. So this is just recognizing that we have this single platform. So you can have a fast data store, you can have a stream processing engine, and we support operationalizing machine learning models and things like that. That's all within one XE, one code base. Any alternative solution would require 3 separate products, 3 separate things to worry about integrating, supporting, doing performance tests and things like that. And so, you know, that's all from me. I just wanted to introduce ourselves, and you know, if anyone has any interest in what I have said and wants to engage or have a discussion with me afterwards, or ask any questions, then I'm happy to take those. Thank you for listening.
Fantastic. Thanks, Johnson. Johnson, would you mind just popping your LinkedIn details in the chat window, just so that people can engage with you and get in touch afterwards with any questions that they have?
I will do. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you. And thanks, Hazelcast. So they sponsor us. They support us throughout the year. So yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so on to the influential CTO. So we collected some of the questions that people submitted when they signed up to the event. So here's some, like, we sort of like had a few questions kind of all over the place. So we tried to summarize them into these ones. Hopefully you can see the poll. Can I get at least one thumbs up to say they can see the questions? Okay, good. Have a read through those. Do me a favor and just vote on it. How we're going to do the rest of the roundtable is we'll look at one question at a time, and we'll just pick the most popular question on there. If there's nothing on there, or you were hoping to talk about something else, then please press none and submit a question in the chat or send something to me directly, and we can do something there. So I've had 5 of 12 people that have answered. Any other thoughts, any other questions that people want to see covered? Okay, 7, 8. Okay, well, much more of a spread than we usually see, a couple of 3s. Okay, I think I'll call it there then, and we'll go into this one. So how can CTOs communicate complex technical concepts to non-technical stakeholders? Can I ask somebody that voted for that? Anyone that voted for that to just add a bit of context, maybe expand on the question there, or maybe share some thoughts and some solutions to that?
I just suggested another topic.
Fantastic, thanks, Mark. I'll put that up for the next one. We'll vote again. So after about 5 or 10 minutes, we'll have another vote, and I'll add your one into that vote. So does anyone have any thoughts then, or anyone that can expand? Yes, Alex.
Hi guys. I tick that question because a lot of my work is less as a CTO and more as an architect, bringing together platforms. And amusingly, Johnson's diagram of the architecture that he said he didn't want to talk about in detail was the most interesting bit to me. So a lot of what I do is trying to explain why the technology is important to the business people in order to kind of explain that it's solving their business problems. But that's not easy. And I was wondering if anybody else had anything to say about communicating with the non-techies. As CTOs, I'm sure you all are good at talking to the technical people in your organizations, but what about everybody else? I'll shut up now. Mark's got his hand up. I don't know, Barry?
Yeah, I'm very fond of diagrams. I like drawing diagrams. I find that one can simplify these things. Other people might talk in terms of analogy, but one really good way of talking about technical things is actually to sidestep it a bit and to talk about the business outcomes. If we do such and such, then we will support business goal XYZ, and so on.
Fairly obvious, really. Good answer.
I don't know if I can put up my hand. I forgot how to do that in Zoom.
Go for it.
You're fine, Mark. You're fine, Mark.
My hand's up. Yeah. So yeah, I think actually I'm in that space a lot. And how to explain techie to business people. And I think one route that doesn't work is actually trying to explain tech things to business people. I mean, that's just like it's like explaining nuclear physicists to a 3-year-old. It just doesn't fly. You know, it's just like not going to happen. They're not going to understand it. So I think you have to understand the rudimentary of the business problem and say, well, if we have this open API architecture, it means that we can gain business where the client doesn't need to adopt our user interface or something. You know, we can then gain these new clients, and that will or bring down the cost of sale. And you really have to work on what are the key things that have been talked about in the boardroom, and link the tech to that. So I was actually putting up what are the 5 main issues a CTO have. I'm a little bit interested in that, but I think if a CTO wants to get their way in a board, they have to look at what are the 5 things that the board is interested in. What are the 5 topics that they're working on, or 3, or 2, or 1? Is it funding? Well, then you need maybe to say, well, then we need to do this. With a product needs to have this feature, function, technology.
I very much agree with that.
Chantal, you've got your hand raised as well.
Yeah, hi everyone. So one way I play it is I visualize the product. So let's say, you know, there might be I don't know, I'm going to just use shopping carts as an easy example. So we're building a shopping cart solution and there's some technical capabilities that need to come into that. If you visualize the product first, and then show the business where the technical requirements come in and what part they play, sort of zoning into each detail along a customer journey, for example, I find that works really effectively.
I think the difficulty comes when you can't suggest things that will be results in short term. For example, I think it's easier to communicate it when you're talking about increasing conversion. Okay, if we do that, our conversion will increase. If we do that, our costs will decrease. But I know not all the time the actions we will take, the strategy we will put forward, will have a direct impact on the short-term results. I think that's where the difficulty is. That's when it gets difficult to explain it. And in such scenarios, I try to explain it through risk reduction. So the what if we don't do it scenarios help me to explain why we should do it. Because I think, yeah, in an ideal world, connecting everything to a short-term business result always works. But by practice, by experience, I know it's not always the case. Sometimes some of these things will end up in long-term impact on long-term results. And explaining the what if scenario if we don't do it helped a lot to me. Like, this can be, we won't be able to retain people and we will have to change the entire technology stack in 2 years' time if we don't do this. And this will be the cost of changing the technology stack will be in 2 years' time if you don't do that. So I start with, this is what will happen if we do that, and the cost of that risk helps me to explain things.
I was thinking technical debt is the big example of that. So anything that you've done for the quick fix will have a long-term risk. If you communicate that long-term risk, then that's good. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Great question. Thanks, Alex. Okay, I'll go back. I'll launch this again. Again, just like Mark V did the last time. If you have a question that is not on here that you'd like to see on here, then please add it on. Actually, I should have removed the one that we've just discussed, so please don't ask that one again. But yeah, vote on what you would like to see talked about next, or what you'd like to share opinions on, share any thoughts on, or have any specific questions around. So we've had 2 of 15 votes, so hopefully you can all see the poll. Don't worry if you can't, or if you're otherwise engaged and can't actually vote. Once we get to see a bit of a clear majority, and we'll move for that one. Again, split. Okay, so let's go with this one then as the next question. How other CTOs manage and empower their teams? This actually came up 2 or 3 times in slightly different ways from the questions. But somebody that voted on that, do you want to expand on the question, or maybe give some context to it at all?
I guess I could start something here. Maybe creating a certain work environment that does empower teams, and giving them that kind of free rein, and giving a bit of more autonomy in terms of trusting the work they do.
I think I was one of the people who voted on it. So I'm not going to answer, but I'm going to just reiterate the challenge I have, because I don't have an answer for it. So I see leaders, I'll give a famous example like Elon Musk, and I worked with someone very similar to him. He was the CTO of the team, and I was reporting to him. They are there in the nitty-gritty bits of everything, basically. They are staying in the office till late hours until the last person leaves. And they're sitting next to developers, reviewing their code, commenting on that code. I work with that kind of a CTO, which is like similar to Elon Musk's leadership style. But I also work with very successful leaders who are only showing direction and managing by purpose, with their purpose. So they stick to only principles, and with any challenge, they only answer with the principles they have. So I'm stuck in between these two and trying to find balance. That's why I raised that question. How did you find that balance? Did you pick a middle ground? And how was that working for you?
Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I know what I think is best, and that is obviously leading with purpose. I think one should, what was I heard somebody say from Silch, that it's when you get so busy that you can't do it, you hire somebody you trust will do it better than you would have done it. And as you kind of delegate, as you start the company, one person, you're doing everything, coding, invoicing, selling, doing the accounts, and then you grow and you hire somebody. And I did that in my company. I found that recruiting was an enormous challenge, so I hired an absolutely amazing headhunter who could wiggle tech people out of their job and into my employment. So I think when you find somebody who's better than you, then why would you go and instruct them? And if you need to instruct them, then you didn't find somebody who was better than you, then you should find somebody else to come on top. So it's just like I think some leaders have hobbies. I mean, they really like the database design, and they want to show that they're still smart and they can still do it. It's like the little bit too old father that still plays baseball and sprains an ankle. I mean, really, that leader should have better things to do, making the money work better and finding investors and buying up companies that he can get cheaper than market rate, or he should do something. If he needs to sit and code with the coders, then he's found the wrong person under. I don't know, just my 2 cents.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mark V. And Mark VH then.
I would add to all of those things that Mark raised and say, I'd encourage or engender the growth of a self-directed team which looked after its own activities, not micromanaging, in other words, but getting the team or teams to take care of their own management. Encourage a process of continuous improvement as well. That adds into it. Encourage discussion, be part of that discussion, which is a bit of leadership in there, but you're not dominating it. And show care for your team. I think there's always a delicate balance as a CTO. You can't do everything. You have to delegate. You have to trust your team to do the right thing, but at the same time as you're trusting your team to do the right kind of thing, what you're doing is asking those targeted questions which ensure that you as the CTO, as the person where the technical buck stops, are assured that the team is on the right track, and delicately step in and ask those probing questions which make the team go, yes, maybe we should change tack where and when it's needed.
Mark,
great staff.
Sorry, would you say at the end there?
I said, but recruiting great staff that you can rely on is the other one.
And you mentioned there encouraging discussion, which I think has come up a number of times in this kind of this conversation around empowering others. How do you do that? I know you've mentioned asking probing questions and that kind of thing, but how do you create that culture? How do you encourage that discussion and make sure you're it's happening, not necessarily with you always in the room?
Well, if I am in the room, I devote time to trying to ensure that everyone has an equal voice. So I will bring in people who haven't been speaking, get their views if they have a view. Hopefully they have got a view. Going back to my teaching career in my past, I would also ask students directed questions as well as open questions. And if there is something lurking there in the room which is undecided upon, you could say, well, Barry, what do you think about X, Y, Z? And elicit people's views that way. That's as much as I can say. I mean, deal with people in a warm, sociable way in those meetings. And I do actually believe that every meeting should have a facilitator. Encourage people to facilitate meetings if you're not going to be there.
Absolutely. Anyone else with anything to add then in terms of empowering teams?
I'll probably add, sorry.
No, please, after you, Sheeta.
I'll be very quick. I'll probably add being open to feedback as well. So your teams are obviously going to have opinions of how things are done. So, capturing their feedback and listening and hearing, letting them share their thoughts and feelings and then acting upon it, I think will definitely help empower them, because if they see the change that they want to see from what they've said to you, then of course they do feel empowered, don't they?
Yeah, so important.
Did that include giving positive feedback when things are going well as well?
All of it, the good and the bad. Yes.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And Johnson, did you have something as well?
I was just going to add that trust is an important factor in all of this as well. So, you know, you've got to be able to, certainly from my experience, you know, teams that I've had in the past, the things that worked well was being able, well, first of all, a shared vision. A shared vision is really, really important, because if you haven't got a shared vision, I mean, it's a very, very difficult journey. And I've had experiences, where we've all had a shared vision and it's been fantastic. Actually, I've had experiences of having a shared vision and it was terrible, but I mean, that's another story. But generally speaking, a shared vision tends to go well, because you know, you continuously have regular meetings to talk about the vision and the goal, because you know, you have to kind of talk about all of those. Are we still on mission? Are we still on track? What other factors do you want to consider? Trusting individuals within your team to deliver when is required is an important thing, and when they're not delivering, to be able to kind of say, you know, how can I help, as opposed to why isn't this ready? I think that has worked well with me in previous roles. But you know, being able to empower, allow people to actually forge the roles that they want, to identify what they're really good at, and allowing them to do that, given that, you know, if you've got the ability to, you know, fulfill that function by enabling individuals to do that. The most success that I have had is around saying to someone, you know, work on, you know, you've got these strengths, you know, allow those strengths to drive you forward, so that you can use the benefits of that to kind of focus in on some of the areas that you need development.
Brilliant. Thanks, Johnson.
I'd like to just, if it's possible, just buttress Johnson's point there, this is Derek. You know, I think that a well-enabled environment allows people to thrive and obviously be themselves, be creative, and you know, share in the company's shared vision, and also be able to freely share knowledge is very, very important in empowering teams. I mean, in my experience, it's always very important. I think Mark made that you know, alluded to that point, where he spoke about allowing people to speak and express themselves, and also trying to put across open questions and making sure that everybody in the room is able to make a point, you know, in meetings, whether it's relevant or to whatever discussion it's being had. It's always very important to allow people to contribute. And so giving that enabling environment, which allows for free communication, and obviously helps a lot in empowering teams.
And of course, I'm just wondering whether, I mean, everything that we said, is it scalable? I mean, does it work better in smaller teams? You know, if you've got a team of like 5 or 6 as opposed to 30 or 40, are all of these answers still applicable? I'm not sure. So, you know, I spent many years, 13 years actually, working for Microsoft, and I remember working in the office of the CTO, and you know, some of the challenges that we had there were really difficult just because of the sheer number of individuals, and you know, how to kind of manage that and mitigate. And you know, Microsoft was a forward-thinking company, you know, they still are. At the time, I liked to think that if anyone can solve this problem, they could, yet we still had these existing problems. And I think from my experience, smaller organizations can manage those kind of things a little bit easier.
I think to add to that, yeah, breaking teams down into smaller workable groups makes a lot more sense, and it's a lot more sustainable in comparison, for sure.
Great, thanks. So just before we move on then, Paul, I did see a hand go up there, but it's down now. Did you have anything to add to that?
Not a huge amount, but just we're a remote team, so in order to work, I think 2 things are very important: communication, which we've touched on, which I think is very important anyway, and trust. You have to, that you can't see people working in the same way that you can if you're sitting in an office, although I think it's slightly artificial if you're in an office. So trust is really important, and just showing up every day and making sure you turn up when you're expected to don't suddenly grasp communication. But it's slightly eerie working with people who are on the other side of the world and often operating in different time zones as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really thrown a spanner in the works, hasn't it? The things that have happened over the last few years, especially, have forced so many companies into this. I don't know if you were around last time, but we had a whole session on managing remote teams and the challenges attached to that. And yeah, certainly came up then as well. Okay. So, Anka, I see your hand up as well there.
Yeah, thank you. So 2 things that I wanted to add are, regardless of the size of the team, one thing that I have seen to work well is to create this alignment of intent and autonomy in execution. And the way of doing that is to, as a lot of you mentioned before, to be very crystal clear about the mission, vision, and the goals of an organizational unit, and then to cascade that intent down the layers into smaller teams and make that very, very clear. It's easier said than done, but as a way of looking at it, solving that problem, this is the way that has worked for me, to cascade it down the layers and then make clear to every subgroup that they have the autonomy in execution and executing the goals. So you as a leader are setting you are answering the why and the what, and letting the groups under you come up with the how. And to answer that question, then that group has to do a similar exercise with all the subgroups. That's number 1. Number 2 is, as leaders, I feel one of the, as you all have remarked before, delegation is an important part of creating empowerment. But we also need to remember that before we delegate anything, we need to think through about how we are going to measure what is being delegated, what are the signals we will use, and have that sort of shared agreement with the person you're delegating the work to, so that delegation doesn't become abdication. So this is a mixture of sort of half philosophy, half practical things that I've seen to work in my career. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. Chantal, I see your hand raised again.
Yeah, I'm forever forever doing that. That leads on to an extra piece that might be missing, and that is actually defining core values as well. So actually saying that one of our values is to encourage autonomy or trust or integrity and transparency, having those values communicated at the leadership level first, I think also helps trickle the same values, and also being those values yourselves and demonstrating that as part and parcel of your day-to-day roles. I think also adds to then also being able to share that vision and then create that connection with your teams.
Fantastic, brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Okay, Mark, one more before, and then we'll revote them.
Yeah, sure. Defining core values. Does anyone have any feeling about the balance of core values which get defined for the organization versus people in the teams defining the team values themselves, please?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I could go on, sorry.
Go.
Yes, I think I highly encourage it. So I think you should have, like, there's always going to be organizational level values, and I think they cut across a wider group of people. But I think when you go into the smaller tribes, and let's just say your smaller teams, then I think it's okay to create your own values, because ultimately that's who you spend most of your time with as well. So it's you're not going to spend all your time with everyone in the organization at the end of the day. So that's just my thought on it, really.
Thanks.
Okay.
I think I set my boundaries very clearly on that. So I share my expectations and in terms of principle and values, and I expect that from the teams. As an example, simplicity. I can't remember the exact wording, but Einstein has a very good phrase about it. Everything should be like as simple as possible. He worded a lot better than that, but he's suggesting that nothing should be overcomplicated, and I'm using that phrase to explain it. And I am questioning whenever they complicate things, if that's necessary. So that principle I expect from them is something I don't leave it with the teams. But how they fulfill these principles, I completely leave that to the teams themselves.
Great stuff. Thanks, Can. Okay, I'm going to launch this poll again. We've got about 20 minutes left. As before, if there's none on there that you fancy, feel free to add another question in there. And likewise, if there's anything in particular that you want to talk about, then again, pop that down. This is good. Almost every time we do this, there's a very clear majority, and on this one, everyone seems to be going in completely different directions. But Mark, I'm going to go with yours then. 3 out of 9, especially as it came up on this call. So, what are the top 5 issues that CTOs have? Who wants to kick us off with the top 5 issues?
I could give you one, and that is CEOs who know too much or too little about technology, particularly in the domain which I work in, which is startups and scale-ups. There may also be problems with CEOs who want to do everything. They haven't learned that now is the time to stop being someone who does everything, as in a startup case, and start developing based on the skills of the senior management team, really. So those are 2 from me.
Great, thanks, Mark. Anything else from any other CTOs on the call here? Can I notice
money to recruit the staff you need?
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Sorry, I broke in. Something might have been.
No,
money to recruit the staff you need. Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
And can I come in on you here? I know I've seen the unmuted there, but top 5 any top 5 issues that you find CTOs have?
I don't have a problem number, but I was just trying to find the top ones. There are so many. Like the reason why I was keeping quiet was, okay, how can I find the top 5? There are quite a few, but I think not the most important, but the latest one I'm being challenged with now is to lead by example and make the engineering team work better with product managers. And also another function we have is delivery, the Scrum Masters we have and the delivery managers we have. So I quite find it difficult to make sure they do collaborate rather than be in constant conflict. So I've been trying to resolve this by showing, like leading by example, by showing myself together with the product lead and other leaders, showing how well we are working together. Look, you should be working like that as well. But it's a challenge.
So it's making engineering team work better with product managers. Yeah.
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 And the solution is could be lead by example. Well, that sounds a good one. What about the money to recruit the staff you need? I mean, it sounds obvious, but what do you do? What do you do if you can't get more money than you need or want more? What does one do?
Well, one obvious answer is to scale back on your ambition, but
yes,
that's not a very satisfactory answer at all. You have to start getting clever in some ways, which may be very context specific. but can you pull off two goals with one action? You know,
but
that
do you
kind
go
of thing.
for a smaller, more highly skilled team? Or do you go for more junior resources, or you ask people to work overtime?
I always prefer to. I know it's a mistake in terms of overall organization development over time, but I always prefer to work with as skilled people as I can. Because I think that you do actually get more bang for your buck. But on the other hand, I've met juniors who are absolutely fantastic at their job and who gets through stuff and do brilliant work.
There are so many different ways to approach it. Like 3 years ago, very similar challenge, not enough money, hiring skills. We started working with universities, which was very helpful. So we were hiring graduates from universities through our graduate program. So we were upskilling them ourselves during their studies and then hiring them to the company. And they were the best talent pipeline we had. So it helped a lot. And it also creates a bond with the company. It's their first job, they stay longer. And during their graduate program, they gain the habit of improving themselves. So they keep upskilling themselves in the following years as well. It was very successful. But it's a long term. Like you won't get the result in just 6 months. It takes 2 years by the time they become your driving force in the team.
At least nobody said AI as the answer to this question. Just employed ChatGPT or something. I wonder how many years it is until that is the answer to that question. But I'm sure that's another.
Well, I mean, that just becomes, as that evolves, that just becomes the environment. I mean, before you had relational databases, you had hierarchical databases, and you work with that, and that was less effective. But then you put more man hours in, and now you've got that tool, and you could get more product done with less. And now you've got very agile tools you can use, agile. And so I think AI, for me, I mean, maybe you'll hang me behind the barn, but I think AI is just another tool that will just seep into productivity where it's relevant, and one will just use it without really thinking too much. But maybe I'm all wrong, and I'm not saying that there are not great startup ideas you can do in AI, but I think there are some places where there'll be a lot of business value. Some pockets where there really will be business value, but I think people just use it.
We'll have to see how well this YouTube ages.
And it might get the boss to put your budget even more. No, I'm going to cut it 20% because you've got AI. Yeah.
Okay, so coming back to the original question around the top 5 challenges, Paul, Derek, Alessio, anything that you guys would add to that at all?
I think the top challenge for me is just the amount of stuff to do, and the fact that I managed to do 10 or 20% of it, and it's choosing that 10 or 20%, making sure that it's the most valuable stuff or as close as I can get to it. That's my experience.
For me, the biggest challenge is, yes, I agree with the big amount of things to do, but is the cultural gap, let's say differences, because my team is remote distributed across several time zones, and sometimes I notice that in my activities there is a big component of technology, but there is also a people component that is not. I learned in the recent years how to manage people from different languages, culture, time zone, and approach to the way of working. And so fundamentally, we adapt our structure, our organization to, in a way, to be a comfortable place for them. I mean, it was too difficult to ask them to adapt to a certain way of working. Instead, we, as a continuous feedback, we change our way of working in a way to adapt to the needs of the team, of a remote team. Example, we pay attention to don't overcharge the team during Ramadan, example, or during Diwali. We are very conscious about when there are the festivals, and so we know that certain team members cannot are not present, are in holidays, or are not in condition to work like during the normal days.
Brilliant, great stuff. Thanks for sharing.
Can I flip this around a bit, somewhat jokingly? I was reading some interview questions maybe a couple of months ago, and one of them was, what's the biggest challenge of a career? And I thought about that myself, and I suddenly went, well, getting to where I am, actually, is the biggest challenge. So, yeah, just dealing with everyday stuff, you know, as a CTO. There's a lot of it coming at you, which is, I guess, very much the point that Paul made.
Absolutely.
I'm curious about one thing, and something I've seen a lot, and I just wonder if you've seen it as well, is engineering teams tend to be very shy, very quiet, and they don't tend to want to share much, especially when you ask them about any challenges they might be facing. Is that an issue that you guys see as well?
Really? I just talk to them.
I think in my experience, this is Derek. In my experience, yes, you are right. It's an issue that, you know, we face a lot because obviously they are more zoned into, you know, delivering products, coding, whereas they're talking to the business people and the marketing. So yes, they seem not to say much, and so that's why, you know, with the right tools, collaboration tools, you're able to derive a lot more from them, where they can be able to express themselves, if not verbally, through, you know, this collaboration tools that you can be able to capture information from them. Yes, so yeah, you're right in that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. They're more open when the CEO is not around or the CTO is not around. Just saying.
Great stuff.
That was good.
Thanks all. Okay, I'm going to go for one more time around then. So we've got about 10 minutes left. If there's any one final thing that you'd like to see discussed or spoken about. 50-50. Okay, let's go with then how to build strong bridges between technology and other business functions, and we'll see if we can squeeze in the how to be more influential in 5 minutes if we can. So anybody that focused on that one, how to build strong bridges between technology and other business functions. Anyone want to add some more context or share some thoughts on that one? Go for it, Al.
The first thing that comes to mind is that quick communication is important. I normally work where technology is typically doing a service for the business, and it doesn't really matter if you take an hour or a day or whatever, as long as you communicate that to the business and they can understand what the job is going to be like, and adjust their expectation accordingly. So that's the first thing that comes to mind, is to always communicate with the business. So like give them sensible expectations about what technology can achieve and what your particular tech team can achieve. So hopefully that's inspired somebody else.
Yeah, it's definitely come up before, that sort of communicating, over communicating. There's never too much in making sure you get that across. So yeah, definitely heard that before.
Yeah.
Shital.
You know what I'm like doing. I would say definitely get in early in the conversations as well from a tech point of view, because otherwise businesses can go straight into this kind of world where they might kind of promise the dream and then you might realize that the technical capability might not be able to cut it. So start your conversations early with businesses as early as you possibly can. Most likely, mainly in the discovery phase, whenever you're building on something new or when the early conversations are happening, just prod and poke them as much as you can. Stay with them.
Anything else, Mark? Would you add anything to that at all, or either of the Marks?
Which Mark? This Mark over here.
Yes.
Getting engineering and product to talk to each other. I would tend to embed the product function inside engineering, but that doesn't really necessarily create the product business bridge. I'm just one for getting people to talk to each other, really. Communication. I was just looking at Shital's LinkedIn profile, and I see a lot of agility on there. And at the time when I started to get into agile methods, I was chatting to a friend and talking about what's the most important thing about being agile. And he went away and he surveyed a whole bunch of people that he knew in Yorkshire about the same topic. And he came back and said, everyone I've spoken to, Mark, emphasizes communication. And I'm a huge one for communication inside companies, across function.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can just finish then on that other question that was had an equal share of the votes: how to be more influential in the boardroom. So does anyone have any thoughts on this? This is one thing that's come up. We did some work before with an aspiring CTOs group, and this was one of the things that came up the most in those mentoring sessions, was the challenge from going in, stepping into that CTO role was this part, getting into the boardroom and being more influential there, and learning to communicate and be part of that executive team. So does anyone have any experience on this, how to be more influential over other people that are not the CTO?
I think that you need to tap into the desires of the board in some way. Try and help the board achieve what they want to, but sometimes, unfortunately, the board is over-expecting, just as a business can over-expect. And therein lies a problem of trying to possibly inject a note of reality, and I'd be very interested in anyone else's experience in this area, because I have had problems in that area before.
Yes, Derek.
So I believe, yeah, like Mark said, I mean, being able to, forge great alliances, and also align the business goals or to the technology goals, and effectively communicate that to the board. I think it's a great way of also trying to gain influence, obviously, with the board. And it's also very important to also align yourself with the topics that are relevant to the board at the moment, and where they can really gain a lot of traction in terms of value. Is also very, very important, and it gives. I mean, from my experience, it gives a lot of inroads with the board. Yes.
Great stuff. Thanks, Derek. A few minutes left. Mark V or Alessia, I know your experiences on the board. Sorry, I'm picking on people that I know their background more here. So feel free, anyone can jump in, but if either of you have any thoughts here.
Well, it really depends on how strategic the product is for the business. Is the product an enabler, or is the product the business? And I'm amazed today you still find some companies, not tech companies, where the CTO reports to the CFO or something like that. And you're like, crumbs, how does that work? It doesn't, is the short answer, in my opinion. So it's the job of the top leadership to define the strategy. And if you are a CTO, your per definition should be on the C-suite. So there should be one CFO, one CCO, one COO, one CEO, and one CTO. I have seen companies that have a CIO and a CTO. Does anybody know how that works? How does that work, Alex?
Fundamentally, the CTO is very rarely interested in the information actually processed by the technology. So and similar CDO, I'm less comfortable with the difference between a CIO and a CDO, but I mean, particularly because I work in data analytics a lot, you'll see that sometimes that is outside of the CTO realm and actually in the CFO realm, which is it's slightly different from what you were complaining about, but I do agree with the main thing you were saying, which is that the CTO should be a C-suite person. Therefore, they should effectively be at the same level as a CFO, not reporting to them.
Yeah. I've only seen it at one company.
I also think that there is no consistent definition of what any particular CXO type job is, and you really shouldn't make assumptions. One of the things I was going to mention is that a very bright guy I know is a field CTO. What I still don't know what a field CTO is, but apparently it's kind of like they explain the company's products to their customers as if they were a CTO.
But they're a sales guy.
Well, yeah.
Well, if you talk to clients, you're a sales guy, aren't you? So that's,
well,
the recording has stopped.
Was that deliberate, Barry? You've stopped the recording.
Not me. That was from somewhere else.
No, that must be.
I didn't say it. I don't have such a nice voice.
Excuse me, I've got to go to a demo, so I'm going to shoot off. But I did want to say one final thing, and this happened to me only last week. I had to remind someone that if the board was making technical decisions, surely it would be a good idea to get the input of the most senior technologist in the company. And yes, I got an invitation to present in 2 weeks' time. But yeah, it's been great. Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks, Barry.
Yeah, let's catch up, Mark. I've sent you a
thank
invite.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all. Thanks everyone for joining in and contributing. Again, thanks to Hazelcast and Johnson for being here. Everyone's LinkedIn's there. We'll follow up everyone anyway and connect directly. But yeah, thanks everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.